All right, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Last Hit, a new LCS podcast brought to you by yours truly, myself, Dash, and Artemis. We're recording this on Monday morning, following week one of the LCS. We will figure out exactly what our release cadence is kind of as we go, but we wanted to get this content out to you as quickly as possible. But we will also be coming to you week over week. Right off the top, I'm going to be pretty annoying in asking you to like, comment, subscribe, follow, whatever it is, wherever you're finding this, be it Spotify, Anchor, YouTube, as much as you can. Help us signal boost early on and bring support to the podcast, the better. So I'll be pretty annoying in the first couple of weeks asking you all to do that, and then we'll kind of push that towards the end of the episodes. We're going to dive straight into it, though, because we got a lot to cover. All 10 teams, first week of LCS play. We're back into it, spring split, 2023. Baby. And what a week it was, because already when you take a look at the standings, it's going to make people reconsider pretty heavily their preconceived notions around a lot of these teams. Yeah. So let's start at the top of the table, the 2-0 teams. TSM, what the hell?
Dude, I have no idea. TSM was a team that I had batting for 9th and 10th, I think. And I'll be the first to admit I was wrong about TSM. I was very, very wrong about TSM. And happily so. Like, I think TSM being 2-0 is great for the league. Like, TSM, CLG, both 2-0. I know that for me, I think I was most excited to see Solo playing well on TSM this weekend. Like, his Ornn game from day 2. Oh my god, he was just so 1v9 in that game. I think that he was weak-sided the whole game. Yep. And in team fights, he was making so much space for his teammates. Like, yeah, it was just an impressive performance from Solo, considering he was catching some shade on the analyst desk,
for sure. In general, I mean, the weekend for TSM was obviously impressive. I think most people were still, trepidatious or couching a lot of their optimism off of their win from Immortals, because that's one of the other teams that most people considered to be bottom 2 or bottom 3. At the very least. And so it wasn't really until the TL victory, I think, that people started to go, okay, now wait a second, what's going on with TSM? And again, to your point, a lot of that comes from the stability that Solo seems to have as a laner that gets left on an island more often than not. Yeah. And I think that's in large part his greatest selling point as a pro player is that idea of being a mercenary, but one that is kind of unshakable and will fill his role on the team as needed. I think the surprise for me when it comes to TSM was actually how well their bot lane was able to play, particularly once you get to mid and lane. Yeah, sure. Sure, in the TL game, they got a little bit abused in lane. I will continue to remind Chime that you can't be disrespecting Illusion with Flash Ignite at level 2 when you have 200 health, and he paid for that one dearly. But then, for as much as he may have paid for that one with his life, the arrows that he was hitting in the mid to late game were astronomical when it comes to picks and keeping them in it. So
yeah, he had some nice ones. I'm still visualizing that one on bot lane where he hits
near Tribrush.
I think he's hitting the top laner of TL there. I want to say, God, that arrow through the train was beautiful.
It would have been Summit.
Also Neo too. Like, Neo is quietly one of the best team fighting ADs in the league, I think. Like, not many people really give this kid a lot of recognition. I think that he's been on some weaker rosters, so you haven't really been able to see the kind of team fighting that this kid brings, but he's nasty. Like, when he first debuted in the league, his Ezreal game was one of the best Ezreal games we had seen, and then he's really quietly just been doing his job. Yeah. And now he finds himself on TSM with a really, really strong core. Like, the Maple, Boogie, Chowie core to this roster, and then you put Solo the mercenary kind of in the top line doing his own thing, and then if you can integrate Neo as a team fighter to kind of support Maple in that, I can kind of see it coming together. And I like it.
Yeah, so far so good for TSM. We'll see if they can show up again in week 2, because it only gets tougher for them. Their opponents are, let's see here, it's Evil Geniuses on day 1 in week 2, and it's 100 Thieves on day 2 of week 2. We'll talk about all of those games at the end of the episode. I don't want to get into it yet. I want to push us on to Cloud9. Cloud9 also 2-0. I think this, though, wonderful contrast to TSM, because very much living up to the expectations that were set for them in the offseason. I think almost everyone had them top 2, if not top 3, when it came to preseason expectations. They took down 100 Thieves in the opener and then dismantled Golden Guardians in the second game of the day. How do you feel about this Cloud9 roster?
I mean, the first game against 100 Thieves, that was the Azir support game and the 100 Thieves bad draft game.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
That made it a little less exciting, but they still dominated that game.
Yeah.
Which is what we wanted to see from C9. And I think like C9 is a roster that it's like you have your magnifying glass all on Diplex, right? Because they only changed their mid laner. And the question becomes, can this guy fill the shoes left by Jensen? And Jensen is one of our most successful North American mids ever.
Sure.
So it's a pretty big ask. And I'll say that he's doing this and then some. Like his Akali game was nasty. He was doing his job in lane phase, like laning it fine. His team fighting was exceptional. Like the way he was buying space for his teammates was perfect. And Jensen on Akali doesn't really do the same things. So I think that C9 is able to have a lot of different looks with Diplex, whereas before with Jensen, they can maybe be considered a bit more one-dimensional. So
okay.
Yeah, and it seems like us also like the team chemistry as well. He's like fitting in fine. So C9 looks to be firing on all cylinders already, and yeah, this is going to be a dangerous team.
I was gonna say, credit to Cloud9 just organizationally for how they almost never seem to miss when it comes to integrating new players. I don't know what it is about their scouting or about the systems that they have set up behind the scenes systems, right, that allow for players to come in though and seem to acclimate, because that would generally be one of my biggest concerns, right? It's just how is a young player going to acclimate to filling the shoes of an LCS great with a lot of weight and expectation on his shoulders, and he seemed to live up to that, and then some here in week number 1. Cloud9, they're sitting pretty. I don't think there's too much to discuss around this squad because they're living up to the expectations so far. Their first game of the week this week, though, is one that I'm super intrigued by because it is against another one of those 2-0 teams. Actually, in fact, both of their games this week are against 2-0 teams. They have to play CLG and FlyQuest. So, I mean, right out the gate, we're really going to start to see how the top of the table shakes out. And given that we've got those matchups coming up, why don't we go ahead and push on to CLG and then to FlyQuest, because these are all going to end up, coming together. So CLG 2-0. What the heck? Did you expect this? Did you not? I feel like CLG, of all of the teams in the offseason, at least for me personally, was the hardest to place from a power rankings perspective, simply because they did not make any changes.
True.
They were on an uptick at the end of last split.
True.
And so you're trying to kind of pinpoint, okay, where are they on their power curve and trajectory?
Yeah.
Relative, though, to what feels like generally an elevation of roster strength, at least at the top of the table, right? And so again, it's like, if I thought maybe they could have been a 4th place team last split, they might. A 4th place team last split might be a 6th place team this split. I don't know. And so I think they became very hard to nail down for me in terms of where I thought they'd ultimately end up. And so far, 2-0 over Dignitas and Evil Geniuses. I mean, the EG win's going to feel good for sure.
Yeah, it does. Especially because they lost. I think they won one of them, but they had so many banger games against EG last year. Like they had, I think, like 2 or 3 50-minute games against EG. Those were insane. I think my expectations of CLG, I actually thought they were going to be pretty good this year.
Okay.
Yeah, and we didn't see any changes for the offseason, which I actually liked for spring. I think that teams that keep some continuity from year to year typically start off a bit stronger. So the fact that CLG kept everything, I thought they'd start off strong. They also did Korean boot camp, so I was thinking, okay, maybe these guys are going to be in good form. And we saw that against Dignitas. Like, they absolutely dominated Dignitas. Like, that game was not close. Contracts is looking like that's like an MVP caliber performance. He's totally just dominating the early game. The leadership he showed in that game start to finish was awesome. And because of that, going into the next day, I really didn't want to do it. But I knew that they were going to be EG.
You called it.
I knew they were going to be EG, and I almost said exactly how it happened. I almost said EG is going to come out to an early lead, and then CLG is going to just hang on and finally fight back. And like, if you can picture the way CLG beats EG and like other top teams, like, it can be exactly like that.
Yeah.
So, impressive, honestly.
So, one, impressive that you called it. 2, impressive that CLG did it. But 3, in terms of how they did it, I did think it was interesting in the interview that Pal Fox did afterwards. He kind of mentioned that the difference he feels in the CLG that we see on stage right now in spring 2023 versus what we saw in summer is that he basically said, I don't think that the summer version of us would have won this game.
Yeah.
So to me, it begins to answer that question around what is the value of keeping the 5, right? Like, because there's that age-old argument of like, do you make changes or not make changes to rosters? If the roster, could only achieve 4th place last year, do you really think just by virtue of keeping them together, they're going to win you the LCS? Well, here's an argument as to why that might be the case, because given more time to marinate as a roster, they seem to be able to navigate some of these tougher and or losing positions in games. I mean, by the same token, we could throw some shade over to EG for how they played out their lead, because I definitely feel like it was there was a point in that game where it was EG's to lose. And like so
the whole game. Basically.
So it did require mistakes out of that, right? Without a doubt. And so, again, I think it's great to see that kind of resilience out of CLG. And that is part of why I think early on in the split, we might see them pick up a number of wins that other teams might not be able to find, purely based on their synergy, ability to come back and kind of identify win conditions. But it is what will also, conversely, concern me when we get to the latter half of the split, and other teams start developing similar types of synergy.
Sure.
I just don't know anymore if the players, how the player skill factors into the whole conversation. But I definitely think their recovery was solid. You'll want to ask some questions about how they found themselves in such a hole in a deficit early game, which was kind of that Rift Herald play that we identified, right? Showing up topside and allowing your bot lane to get completely abused by that tower dive against an early game focused team. So one little mistake definitely put them in the hole, but they showed a lot of grit in fighting their way out of it, and they now sit 2-0. Their opponents this week, like I said earlier, going to be Cloud9, but their second one is going to be Immortals. So an interesting week for them. The tough one is definitely that first day of the week. But that brings us to our 4th and final of the 2-0 teams, FlyQuest, taking down both Team Liquid and Dignitas this week. FlyQuest right up there alongside Cloud9 for most people when it came to 1, 2, 3 in power rankings. What did you think about what they showed today? Because this is a roster that I think when you just look at name identity, things like Prince or people like Prince, there was a lot of expectation to see star power out the gate. Did he live up to that for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
He did for me as well. He absolutely
did.
For me
I mean,
as well.
oh my God. FlyQuest was
that Ezreal game,
FlyQuest
dude.
was sick this weekend. They were sick this weekend, and I think I love their draft. Like they got Spica and Maokai twice, and I think in their first
they're
match,
the only team that managed to get Maokai, right?
I don't know. I don't know if they were the only team. Like I don't have it in front of me, but they were a heavy priority on Maokai and a really nice scaling look for Prince. He played the Zeri Lulu one game. He played the Ezreal Karma the other game. They had the Maokai both games. Impact is on scaling carry on top side. He had GP second game. I forget what he had in the first day. But yeah, like if you're looking at the type of players FlyQuest have, and then you look at the drafts that they did, their drafts fit their players exactly, perfectly.
Yeah.
And I think that's a mark of a talented coach, and also a roster and a coach that's all on the same page, because they're looking at what the other team is doing, and they're seeing the exact same solution, and they execute well on stage. So they look dangerous, man. Like FlyQuest, they're a dangerous looking team. Yeah.
I don't have a ton to follow up on that, to be honest, because they really did just perform. And I think Prince immediately showcased why he should be feared as an AD carry in this league, especially this year. I mean, that Ezreal game, how fast he hit 8-0-0. I don't even remember what he ended, but
that's pretty nasty. Yeah. I mean, I'm still thinking of when he's diving them. They're diving between turrets. He's shifting forward. Like so many times that game, he's just shifting forward. No fear. Yeah. This was done with Winsome. Yes.
Ayla, unfortunately, not with the team just yet. But I'm curious where you stand on that, because if I recall on the day, or one of the 2 days while we were watching, you had said that you actually think Winsome might be better.
Yeah, I think in some situations he could be better, and I think like overall it's probably a side grade, if anything. Like I don't think that it's going to make or break this roster by switching those two support players.
Okay.
I will say that Winsome's spot is probably less guaranteed now after not dying for the Penta for Prince. I don't know if you guys saw that clip, and like everybody's saying, "Oh, Prince is joking. He's not actually mad at him." I am not sure. Like if you look at Prince's facial expression when he's talking about Winsome not dying for that pentakill, he's fucking mad, bro. Like I'm dying for Prince's penta. I don't care what happens to the game. Like, if Prince is on a pentakill, you die for the pentakill. I don't care about anything else. The fact that Winston's not willing to die for that pentakill, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know how team politics work like you do.
Let me tell you, I'm going straight to the general manager if I'm Prince, and I'm saying I'm never playing. I'm
gonna trust you on this one. That it's a house divided now, which probably means FlyQuest is going 0-2 this week. You can wrap it up. Yep. Season's over. All right, so we already know that Artemis thinks that FlyQuest is flaming out by the end of the year. They have their two opponents this week are going to be Golden Guardians and then Cloud9 on day 2.
Okay.
We'll get to those matchups in just a bit. That does it for the 2-0 teams. Right now, the way it breaks down is there are 4 2-0 teams, 2 1-1 teams, and 4 0-2 teams.
Okay. That's kind of cool
LCS.
because we're seeing like top 4, bottom 4, and then like maybe a top 6 a little bit, and like this. Teams will move through, right?
Of course.
Like we're seeing kind of a split already, which is interesting.
Well, I like that call out because when I initially looked at the teams going into the season, I thought there would be a top 6, bottom 4. Like to me, I kind of identified for myself. I see a clear top 6 and a clear bottom 4. Now, if you were to actually take the current top 6 and the current bottom 4, it's not the ones I thought. Would be there.
Yes, we're got to like Team Liquid maybe should be somewhere different,
but there is maybe a top 6 and a bottom 4.
Yeah.
So let's get into those next 2 teams. Our 1-1 teams are Evil Geniuses and 100 Thieves. Let's start with Evil Geniuses because I think this one was such a surprise to so many people. Again, this is a championship-winning team, an organization from just last year. Yes, it was spring and not summer, with a couple of roster changes, but still plenty of powerhouse names on that roster that just by that alone, you would probably say, you'd want their opening weekend, considering it was against Golden Guardians and CLG, to be a 2-0. So they got the win. They got it done against Golden Guardians.
Barely, though. Like, barely.
Right. And then they dropped the ball against CLG from a winning position, and we kind of already talked about it from the CLG side of things, but also given kind of your history with the team and some of those players, I'm curious how you evaluated their week 1.
Yeah, I mean, the question was all, how will they bounce back from day 1? Because like we didn't know what we were going to expect from EG. Like, they kept their strong core, but they made a couple of changes. They also totally revamped their coaching staff, so it's entirely new staff behind the scenes. And that day 1 was really shaky. It was really, really shaky. Like, I wasn't 100% sold on the draft. I was really less sold on the gameplay. Like, they had a 4K lead, and then they did absolutely nothing for 30 minutes that game, and then like barely won in the end. And JoJo, I think, finished like 0-6, 0-7.
JoJo had a rough day.
Yeah, and like it was this thing where like he's like playing decently well in this matchup, and he's like, he's doing his job, he's pressuring, and then he's dying. And then he's going to his side lane, he's like doing his job, he's pressuring, but he's pressuring at the wrong time, and he's dying. And he's just like making kind of like head scratching mistakes.
Right.
But at the same time, he's in other phases of the game. He's not playing badly the whole time.
It is a good clarification that like particularly his lane phase was actually really solid, right? He was hard winning lane if you're isolating the 1v1, was building a solid CS advantage and had priority and the ability to roam if needed, right?
Sure.
But to your point, he then followed that up by going 0-6-0. Over pushing side lanes and getting caught. And so how much of that are you chalking up to just rust or overconfidence and, hey, it's first day of the split. This is a kid who's got, who's pretty cocky and wants to push the limits?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think that I can make excuses for JoJo his first year. Yeah. And I think we, as fans and analysts, we can make excuses for JoJo his first year. Like, he was a guy that, like, he'd play with disrespect. He'd play with too cocky. He'd have a little bit too much fun, end up running it down. Like, that just doesn't fly anymore, man. Like, this is supposed to be our best mid laner in the league. He's a Worlds incumbent, MSI incumbent. He's a champion. Like, you simply need to hold him to higher expectations. Do I think that JoJo was having too much fun in his day 1 game? I don't think so. I think, if anything, it was the opposite. Yeah. I think JoJo might have felt a little nervous in that day 1, which is weird for JoJo because JoJo doesn't really get nervous. But we have to think about the change in expectations on JoJo from last year to this year and on EG from last year to this year. Yeah. Last year, nobody expected anything from JoJo. Maybe they expected him to be good, but they didn't expect him to go to Worlds, go to MSI, win championships. Like, he surpassed expectations in a really, really serious way, and so did all of Evil Geniuses. And now they have to go in to live up to these expectations again, which is a totally different place to perform from than being a rookie who has something to prove. Now you have something to defend. So totally different psychological mix for him, totally different mix for EG. And that's why I was so interested. Can they battle back in day 2? And that's why I'm a little concerned, because it looked challenging.
Yeah, so break down the day 2 loss against CLG for me. As we've already stated from the CLG perspective, like, this was a game that was EG's to lose.
Yep.
Given the early advantages that they had created, right?
And given the draft too.
And given the draft, right? Drafting essentially completely early game with Inspired on the Elise, going, all right, we're about to run amok.
And you have
on
JoJo
the bot
on
lane.
Rise. Yeah, and you have JoJo on Rise too.
Exactly.
All about moving JoJo to the bot lane, and they were able to get these early plays off.
Well, and so credit where it's due. They capitalize brilliantly when they see CLG move to the Rift Herald. That gives them permission. 4-man dive bot. They completely wiped the map and set up their bot lane with a massive advantage.
I think JoJo dove both top and bottom in the first 8 minutes of that game. I think they even got a dive off top lane, which they should never be able to do. So early game, they were clicking.
So, but with all that behind us, then where did it fall apart? Like, where do we lay the blame or the criticism on EG for the loss? Because as we said, it's theirs to lose.
Totally. Yeah.
And so while CLG did plenty of right in terms of capitalizing on mistakes or punishing mistakes, what were those mistakes from EG, or just what did they not do strategically that comp needed to do to close it out fast?
Yeah, they just stopped playing the easiest way to say is they stopped playing their game and started opting into what CLG needed them to do. The only way that EG will lose that game is if they get out team fought 5 times in a row. It's not one team fight that they lose is going to lose them the game. They need to lose the 3rd Dragon team fight, the 4th Dragon team fight, the Elder team fight, the Baron team fight, the 2nd Baron team fight. There's so many fights that they had to lose, and they lost all of them. And the problem for me is when I'm watching that game is find another solution to the problem you're facing in game that's not 5v5 my way out of this.
Right.
JoJo is playing Rise, have him attack a side lane and pull 2 people to him, and then rotate away from JoJo and attack the other side. Let him be a decoy for your operations on the other side. Try something creative. Don't just say, okay, guys, we're up 8K, we got to win this team fight. Let's go to the Dragon, let's team fight CLG. I needed to see a creative solution to a game where they quickly found out they can't team fight, and they made the same mistake over and over and over.
It was pretty wild because, at least for the both of us, we had identified probably around the 20 to 25 minute mark, and I think I pretty blatantly said even on the broadcast or on our show, 35 minutes, if the base turrets are not broken, it's over.
Yeah.
And I think at 35 minutes, EG lost one of those team fights we're talking about, and at that point it was, and with not a single inhib turret down or even really touched, and you just knew it was locked up at that point. I think the call out for you have to start asking yourselves the questions. I mean, and this sounds really fucking basic, but what is our team good at? And what is their team good at? What are our 5 champions good at? What are their 5 champions good at? And how do those 2 things interact? And I think it's pretty elementary, and this is almost why I'm a little concerned for that loss, because I feel like those 5 players should be very capable of looking at the 2 compositions and go, that team out team fights us.
Yes.
So what should we not do? Team fight them over and over and over again, and then to your point, let's try and pull the map apart. Yeah. Let's get some attention over into the side lanes, and let's out macro this team.
And that's what's so interesting, because it's so easy to see that they made the wrong decision, right? That much is obvious, but why? If you start to think about why somebody's making the wrong decision, it gets very complicated and very interesting. And there's a whole science behind why people choose what they choose and when we make mistakes and how we make mistakes. And a typical way that you make mistakes during a high stress situation with a complicated task where you're handling multiple things at once is where you get overloaded by the situation. Usually it's from emotion or too much information. And in League of Legends, it's rarely the information, because the information is pretty constant in every game. That's they're used to it, right? It's kind of the same level of complexity in every game. But the emotion, that extra stuff on the outside, that's what's different. And sometimes if there's too much extra stuff going on, it can be really difficult to figure out the solution. Even though for us, we don't have any of this emotion. So we're dude, just don't fucking teamfight them. It's so obvious. But sometimes in the game, it's a lot more tricky than that.
Every League of Legends player has had the experience where you're so far ahead in a game that you've probably even said to your friends on Discord, like, it doesn't matter what we do at this point, we're winning anyway.
That too, yeah.
And
that too.
I know many a pro player who has that same, who can or does have that same kind of attitude within a game of like, we're 5K up, 10K up, or we feel like we are.
Let's just fight.
So let's just fight them.
Yeah.
We're just going to beat them, guys.
Let's
just
just play better this time.
Yeah,
we just fucked up last time.
Yeah.
Like, just don't miss your cue this time. Come on, we're going to win this time.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of go again.
And then all of a sudden, your 5K gold lead is gone.
Yeah.
And you're screwed. So Evil Geniuses, 1-1. Tough week for them. 100 Thieves, the other 1-1 team. Let's talk about them a bit. I have a hard time evaluating their 1-1 week, largely because fuck that game 1 draft.
The Azir man.
I don't. So it's like,
man.
because we couldn't even really. The only thing we came up with was it is a Heimer lane counter.
It's gonna win lane.
It is gonna win lane, which it did. It got 3 plates and a small CS advantage. But beyond that, it was a 4v5. Like, it was actually an irrelevant champion for the rest of the game. And so it's one of those things when I try and evaluate the record, the loss itself, I struggle with. I go, okay. Bad draft, and I don't normally like to say a game was determined by a draft. Yeah. But this is one of those cases where, again, I'll even give them credit, like they wanted to try something. They want to test this counter because in the world where it's successful, oh shit.
Now we're cooking.
You found the counter to the Heimer lane, and you're the only team that has practiced it, and it can be super valuable. So like, I do kind of want to give them the space and the opportunity to try that.
Totally.
But also, therefore, then I can't really evaluate this team and how good they are off of their week because their loss.
Yeah.
I don't
see what you're saying.
Like, strategically, I don't know how to evaluate it.
Yeah.
And then their win, they looked pretty solid in their win. Doublelift kind of looked back to like the type of Doublelift, if anything, I'd be like, with a year off of pro play, Doublelift still looks pretty close to like what the form I would have expected to see him at the beginning of a spring split in any other year of his career, right? Where like this guy happy to lane and just create advantages and then show up in the team fights later and perform. And that is probably, in my mind, 100 Thieves' best way of playing as this roster of 5. Like, I don't think they should be a top focused team with Tenacity. I still think they should be a Doublelift focused team.
And you got to leverage his experience and his communication shot calling. Like Doublelift, he understands how to command the game. He understands how to like get his teammates to play around him and around bottom like the way that they need to win the game. That's like one of his advantages over other AD carries. So yeah, when you have Doublelift in your roster, you want to enable him to use his voice to carry the team too. So yeah, I don't know, dude. When you're saying like this is Doublelift of old, like Doublelift of old is flashing Azir ults and like not dying under turret and losing both his.
Yeah, but he's also not flashing Victor ults.
Okay,
so.
True. So maybe this is just a Doublelift thing, a problem with flash. But like,
I guess I don't know. For me, like week 1 was a wash for 100. They're the team of all 10 that I'm coming away from week 1 going like, I don't fucking know.
Yeah, I mean, like I liked their game 2 better than their game 1. It was still iffy because of a couple mechanical things I saw from Doublelift. I was just like, whoa, man, like you gotta flash that. Like he could have died when he got hit by that Azir wall, and like he's a good enough player to flash that. So I was just a little confused. And then in game 1, you could see that the Azir was winning the lane. Like they had a CS lead, they were pushing. Like that was like working, and I think that the troublesome piece is that that's where it ended completely. Yeah. Like completely ended there. There was no translation of the bot advantage to anywhere else in the map. None, and
totally.
That's a coordination issue, and that means that even if like the Azir does work, even if anything works, if we can't coordinate correctly to translate a bot advantage somewhere else, then we can never actually play a bot-centric strategy. And that's what we're talking about with Doublelift. That is a bit troublesome for me. If they want to play around Doublelift the way that he kind of needs to be played around to maximize his position in the roster, we need to see better coordination from them because they won the lane, but they didn't do anything with it.
Agreed.
And that's kind of scary.
Agreed, but again, I hit that wall where I go, they didn't do anything with it, but I go, they didn't do anything with it because they had a fucking useless champion on the Rift with them that can't really do anything with that goal.
But they're pushing the lane, right? And then like bring the jungler to the lane and then move with it to the dragon, or like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Use the Azir prio, play the 3v3, support the 3v3, and then rotate together as a group. And then affect the rest of the map. Like there's ways that you can do that.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
They didn't see anything. They could have done more, but I just don't know if they could have done enough in that game.
That's fair.
And so again, I don't know. That's for me why I come to a place I'm like, fucking toss it out. Let's just wait.
I mean, I have no idea how
Let's
good,
evaluate
I have no
them
idea how
this
good
week.
they are. That's fair.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying. It's
No
like
idea.
I learned nothing about this team because their loss. Again, I feel like a lot of the solution is don't draft Azir. Like you could replace Azir with a different pushing range support.
Yeah, anything.
Create a similar type of advantage.
Sure.
Probably. And then have an easier time following up on that advantage like you're talking about because it is just a better utilitarian champion. Like if I have an Ashe who can be firing arrows, or if I have I have a Karma that can at least be shielding and speeding us up, looking for picks, or poking harder under turrets or something with Mantra Key. I don't know, but like I just don't. Again, Azir. I don't want to talk about 100 Thieves for too long because I think it's a cyclical and stupid
The last thing we should say, though, is I want to see how they draft for Tenacity next week because this week they were, in my opinion, they were over-prioritizing comfort for him almost at the expense of their compositions. Day one, they were blind picking him Jax, and a lot of teams were blind picking Jax with Cassante open. Leave that, especially for Tenacity, leave that. I don't want to see blind pick Jax with Cassante open. And then in day two, there's so much stuff banned 4-5. Like Gnar was banned. Like I think there were 3 or 4 top laners banned. Cassante was banned on 4-5. It was like a perfect Ornn angle, and then they lock in the Renekton on 4-5.
Yeah.
Which is his comfort, but it didn't fit. So I'd like to see them drafting a bit differently for Tenacity, and I want to see how that develops.
Yeah. There you go. I'm with you there. If anything, my biggest criticism for 100 Thieves coming out of week 1 is they had the weakest meta read. And or they're drafting specifically for what their players want and taking hits in the team compositional. The team composition.
They definitely had
category.
a couple of head scratchers. Yeah.
The O2 teams. Let's start with Immortals. Immortals, they lost to TSM and they lost to 100 Thieves. The loss to TSM, again, that's the one that coming into the week people thought would have been a close battle at the bottom of the table. And then they were on the wrong end of probably a slightly more angry 100 Thieves on day 2 and took the loss there. Immortals, where are you at with this squad? Because this does go to expectation.
Yeah.
Well, does it not?
I mean, yeah.
I'm
just
sad. You said that like a question.
No,
I'm like,
you heard a question, but
do you not think they're a 9th, 10th team? I think they're a 9th, 10th team.
It was just sadness.
Yeah.
It was sadness in my voice because I don't see how this team gets out of where they are now. And I don't want to just be like, Immortals is like the worst.
Especially off of
just 1 week.
Yeah.
But it was just bad. It was all bad. The draft was bad. The play was bad, and I didn't see a lot of redeeming qualities from them. In their day 1 game against TSM, like that's the game where like maybe it was like closer. At least from our understanding of the strength of teams.
Yeah.
And so like maybe that's where they could have won, and I just really did not like the draft that game. They're playing the Fiora Sejuani against the Cassante, and like Revenge goes up like 20 CS. And like one play, and the Cassante just totally 1v9s the game. And I don't care how well your Fiora Sejuani is doing against Cassante in fucking scrims. Stop picking that shit on stage, okay? And what was worse is they picked their full topside with it. They did like the Silas Sejuani Fiora 1-2-3, and they picked like a randomly losing bot lane 4-5 too. What was their 4-5?
I'm trying to find it all right here. So let's see here.
Wait, hang on.
Talking about which game?
It was their first game of the day on day 1. Immortals get draft from day 1.
Day 1, Immortals against TSM.
Draven Pike.
Oh yeah, it was the Pike.
And honestly, Draven Pike was my favorite part of the draft. It was great. That was a great Pike angle. And the problem though is we have a Fiora Sejuani styles topside who's like, we're trying to do things on 2 sides of the map at the same time. And we're playing a Fiora and a Draven. And how can my Sejuani be in 2 places at once?
Yeah, really, the reality is like the Fiora is what warps it, right? Like, because I think the Silas is fine with a different top laner. But the Fiora is what really stands out to me as strange.
I mean, like, Fiora Sejuani is brutal for any top laner to lane against, to 2v2 against. It's going to win the lane, but I don't give a fuck about your lane. I'm trying to win the video game. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care who goes up 20 CS. I genuinely don't care.
Yeah.
And I like Fiora it's fine. Like, it's fine. But the problem, though, is it was landing with the Draven Pike lane.
No, I
You know what
agree,
mean? And
because
you're never going to be on both sides of the map.
Draven Pike versus Lucian Nami is such a volatile matchup.
Yeah, you have to
You
be
have
there.
to be
You
there.
have to be there.
You have to be
or
there.
else there's no point in
But
drafting.
likewise, so is the top side. It becomes volatile as soon as you draft the Fiora, because that's an easy target for Elise and Cassante to try and look to abuse. And so, yeah, now your Sejuani feels torn between both
and
sides
like
of the map.
you could argue, Artemis, this Fiora is just going to win 1v1, and you're going to play 4v4 on the other side of the map, and he's just going to win the 1v1 naturally. And my question to you is that going to kill the Nexus? Like, is your Fiora going to get to the enemy Nexus and kill the fucking Nexus? Because if you are not winning the game by Fiora killing Nexus, I think it's a bad strategy.
Yeah.
Because Cassante is going to do 10 times more than you in team fights. So
Fair enough.
I don't want to hear about these lane counters anymore, man.
Yeah, so if he draft, especially in game number 1, their second game against 100 Thieves, this is where they had Ornn, Wukong, Azir, Sivir, Lulu. So what's interesting about that, I mean, a way more cohesive team comp, but also it goes completely the other direction from a Draven Pike lane.
Yeah,
So I'm like, okay, now all of a sudden that just tells me, contrary to a lot of other teams, that this team does not have an identity yet. Like they to your point about like doing prep over the week, proper prep over the week is, the team and the coaching staff having an understanding of the way in which we want to play the game of League of Legends and how we best think we're suited to win. And they drafted two
totally different looks,
completely opposite looks.
Yeah.
And so, and you know what? Hey, actually, this might be the moment for us to take that kind of half step back and say, if there is a week to be doing that kind of stuff, it's week 1, right? Like, it's, not every team has it all figured out in week 1.
No, it's true. And sometimes you do lose game 1 of the week, and you say, fuck it, our prep is all wrong. Like, throw that shit out. Like, let's go back to the drawing board.
CLG's scaling. Maybe it's all about scaling.
Right, like, what do we do for tomorrow?
Yeah,
so that
yeah.
does happen. But that's not a good place to be. Like,
no.
But when you get to their second day LCS, you're like, fuck, our week of practice was useless. Like, what do you guys want to play tomorrow? And like, fuck it, let's draft full scaling and hope we win.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to win many games, man.
Totally.
You're not going to win many.
Rough go for Immortals. They face Team Liquid and CLG this week. Next up, though, Dignitas. Dignitas, they went 0-2 against CLG and FlyQuest. So, look, those are tough opponents. In terms of, like, expected strength of schedule,
totally,
that's actually a very, very tough set of opponents there. CLG, again, day 1. This is a roster that is comfortable together. We know they work well together. And so, definitely not easy. And then FlyQuest, again, just the star power. And FlyQuest being the second game, this was the Prince pop-off game, so I just don't know how you necessarily contend with that. All that said, you look at the top side of the map for Dignitas, Armut, Centauran, and Jensen. That's who you would put the expectation on to make something happen if something is going to happen.
Yes.
And immediately, I am concerned for Armut in the landscape of LCS top laners. Yes. Seeing the targeted Gnar bans coming out from teams, right?
Yeah, day 1.
That's
nobody even cares.
Again, that's telling to me because Gnar's not a strong champion. I mean, he's not weak either. Like, he's relevant. But, like, it's not like this champion's getting banned against everyone. And so when someone is saying, like, this champion's not even top tier in the meta, but we're still going to ban it against you because we know it puts you in a position that we think is winnable for us. That's a scary place to start from a meta perspective, number 1. And then number 2, I also just struggle, I think, a little bit to understand. I'm going to use this word and you let me know if it doesn't make sense. I'll try and explain it. Like, I don't know where the fire is on this team.
Yeah, sure.
Like, Armut is a big personality for sure. And I fucking adore Centauran and will always root for him as a player and a personality. Even, honestly, soft spot in my heart for Jensen and his legendary career. But none of them, again, feel like the winning factor on a team. Like, they're all really strong players. But, like, we don't solo carry the game through mid lane anymore. No. So even if Jensen wanted to do that, I don't even think he's that kind of a player to begin with. Number 2, Centauran has never necessarily been just this hard carry, jungler. No. He's not a blabber. And so then I get to this place where it's very hard for me to understand how this team intends to win anyway. Yeah, and it was a team I thought would have a lot of work to do to figure it out. Yeah. It wasn't a roster that I looked at on paper and said, oh, these guys are going to click right away. This is going to be easy chemistry. Like, these guys are going to fire right out of the gate. This was a roster I thought would take a long time to get it together, and if then, might actually never get it together. And
Yeah, I see just a lot of anti-synergy between Armit and Jensen. Like, I don't understand really what that top side does.
Yeah.
I'm kind of with you there.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see it. And it's way too early it's week 1, but I'm even more interested in Hoon, like Dignitas Academy top laner, than I am in Armit. And like it's rude of me to say that after week 1.
No.
And we're banning Znar, we can't see his best champ, but like Hoon is an Academy popping off already. And like I'm bored of Armit.
You're saying that after week 1, Dom's been tweeting about Hoon all offseason, man. Dom is big on Hoon.
I mean, it's one of those things where I feel bad, but I don't see it getting better for Dignitas.
No.
I don't see it getting any better. I think they're going to continue to struggle. I think we have so many strong teams in the league. There's like 6-7 teams that I put really comfortably above them, even on a bad day.
Yeah.
I think on Dignitas' best day, they'll struggle to compete against the worst days of our top 6.
Yep.
And is Jensen going to stay motivated through a losing regular season? This is a guy who's never missed Worlds. You put him on a roster that starts to lose. How does Jensen react to that?
Yeah,
I got questions.
Yeah, I'm worried for this roster. I'm particularly worried that they're going to go. They have a good shot of going 0-4 in the opening 2 weeks.
What's their next two?
Their next 2 opponents are 100 Thieves and EG.
Yeah,
so it's possible. All right, 2 more teams to get through. Next up, Golden Guardians, and we'll close out with Team Liquid. Golden Guardians, they took losses to EG and Cloud9. So right there is where I would say, hey, if you're looking for, a way to like couch the week 1 record, it is the fact that their opponents were EG and Cloud9. These are very, very strong opponents. And so from that perspective, I think these were, again, quote unquote, expected losses. So at least this is an O2 team that's gone to chalk versus Team Liquid, which we'll get to in just a moment.
Yes.
But overall, again, Golden Guardians, how do you feel about anything that you saw from this week, or just generally, what the approach was, considering the players that they have,
Yeah, it's a team I'm not super excited about. I think they're solidly bottom of the table. I don't think they're really going to look to upset many of our top teams. Mm-hmm. I think they have a little bit of something in that EG game. The fact that they made it hard for EG, I think that they can claim that and say, okay, we didn't just roll over and die. And I think that's good. And then in their game against C9, I hated the draft. I thought it was really, really egregious, and that was the game where
remind me, what did you not like about it?
It was the Sedge Irelia something. They had the double bruiser. I think it was Jax Sedge Irelia topside, something like Jax Irelia Sedge topside, and then the Sivir Yumi. So you're playing all AD against Cassante.
Oh yeah, the itemization here I remember calling out, just being like, this is the simplest itemization ever now.
Yeah, you're playing like the triple bruiser topside with the Sivir Yumi, and it's one of those games where if you fall behind, your only wave clears Sivir, and she's too short range to even hit the wave against everything that could dive her. So how do you progress the game even if you have a lead? It was just a draft where I saw it and I said they can't win, and I didn't even need to watch the game.
Yeah.
I hate seeing that too.
No, totally. I got you. Also, Diplex did kind of pop off on that Silas game as well, though. He was looking.
No, he
good.
did. He really
did.
did.
All right, there you go. Again, I don't want to dwell too much on the O2 teams. So Golden Guardians, we're still waiting to see something from them. Again, they play. Jeez, their week is tough too, man. Holy crap. We might have a couple of O4 teams.
What is it?
They have to play FlyQuest, and then they have to play Team Liquid.
Yeah, that's a really rough week.
That could be really brutal. Week. That said, we now have to talk about Team Liquid because they're an O2 team. Liquid. So, again, as I'm talking about Golden Guardian's schedule for week 2, I'm saying, tough week. They've got to play Team Liquid. I don't know, the current version of Team Liquid is mighty beatable, apparently. What the hell? Okay, so what do you make of the O2 week for Team Liquid? They dropped to FlyQuest, again, another very tough team. I think the TSM loss is the one that surprised, obviously, most people. Considering we expected TSM to be in that bottom bracket. Yeah. Where are you at with this Team Liquid squad, man? Total shift in philosophy for them, bringing in some big name Summit pickup.
It's shocking. It's absolutely shocking is what it is. Like, when you add in the context of Team Liquid's offseason and what they built this year, like, let's set the table here. They went for, like, this full LCK style cultural team that was going to outwork everybody in the LCS.
Yeah.
That was their goal, and they said it publicly. We're going to outwork the LCS to the point where we're not only going to win championships, but we're going to change the entire culture of the LCS. So they didn't even want to just win; they want to dominate.
Yeah.
All right, now let's examine their performance from week 1 with that context.
It wasn't dominant.
Wasn't dominant. We heard from a couple of inside sources that, Corjity being one of them, that they were already practicing scrimming and solo queue 16 hours a day.
Jesus Christ.
16 hours a day leading up to week 1. And I don't want to talk about, the grind hustle culture versus NA culture.
Sure.
We don't have the time for that. We'll do a separate podcast episode only on that.
Yeah,
right?
that can be a topic later down the line.
Yeah, but I will say it's a little bit concerning that the Team Liquid now has nowhere to go to. That's my only problem, right? Because if you go 0-2 in week 1, you would love to say, okay, guys, like that's not how we wanted to start, but like we're gonna bring it back. So let's stay at the office a little bit later this week. Like let's work a bit harder this week, so we can feel good. So we can feel good about ourselves going into the weekend, because you can feel confident in the weekend if you can be confident in your preparation. So what teams do to rebound, oftentimes they work a bit harder,
right?
Because it makes you feel more confident in your prep. You say, okay, I worked a bit harder this week. Now I feel a bit better.
Yeah. But if you already went 100.
If you're already at 100, where do you go? And the problem is now they're going to say, okay, this was an unacceptable result. We have to do better. We have to work harder, because that's what TL always says. Now we're working 18 hours a day, 20 hours a day.
Now you're risking completely other issues.
And now we're talking about burnout in week 2 of spring. We are already talking about burnout for Team Liquid, and that's crazy, And so I don't care about the cultural things, and I don't want to get into that debate.
No.
I just want you to think functionally. If they want to change now, if they want to react to what they saw and ratchet up, how do they do that?
Yeah. Wow. Honestly, I didn't even want to I want to leave that there, because I think that was very well said, and it's a phenomenal question to be asking. We will have to see how week 2 goes, right? Because as you mentioned, if things don't go well for them in week 2, we are talking about burnout. We're talking about blowing this roster up between splits. Like
it gets ugly fast.
It gets ugly so
it's a pressure
fast.
cooker. It's not, there's no release valves built in.
Yeah.
The pressure
and again, all of that comes from the expectations that were set for this roster
from inside
from within the org.
team.
Because they were and hey, I also don't want this to come off as because I appreciate that kind of communication and transparency from the org. I like hearing what the intention is. So I don't want to fault them for setting an expectation for themselves and being public and transparent about that. It is unfortunate that it's right now biting them in the ass.
Yeah.
And that just might be the reality. Only time will tell there. I think, the other thing I'd want to bring up for Team Liquid is, I think right now the question is still not answered, which is fair. It's only been week 1, but I'll call it the Summit problem, right? Which is there was a Summit was a dominant top laner, all regular split in spring, and then became a liability in the playoffs simply because teams identified a way of attacking specifically the type of player that he is and how he wanted to play and how the team felt they needed to play around him. Just throwing that out there as this still exists for me. That has not been answered in this Team Liquid roster, right? So in bringing him in, I expect them at some point to answer the question.
To fix that. Yeah.
Yeah, around have you either fixed that and you found a way to move away from that style of play, so it's just not an issue, or did you find the answer to the count? You're saying, no, we are actually going to continue to index into him, and we've either just expanded the champion pool or we're changing our playstyle, whatever it is. The Summit problem still exists for me.
Totally.
So I want to see that resolved over the coming weeks. That brings us to the end of the standings and breaking down where all the teams are at the moment. With the final however many minutes we have on this episode, I think we should just go into the matchups for this coming week.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's put ourselves on record right here.
Good.
For who we think is going to take it.
Sure.
We'll I'll have my editor kind of throw up lower thirds or whatever for us.
Perfect.
And we can kind of track this stuff all year long. So, first matchup of the week in week 2 is going to be CLG versus Cloud9. Huge matchup in terms of predictions.
Yeah,
because again, it's 2-2-0 squads. I think I am still going to go the way of Cloud9. I am somebody who is generally heavily swayed by, my expectation of player to player skill matchups. And almost across the board here, I think I would say that the person on that holds the position on the Cloud9 side of things is the better in that role. And so just by virtue of that, I'm going to go ahead and give it to Cloud9. I also think that they played pretty damn well together.
They did.
Considering only one new piece to the puzzle this year. So I think where CLG has had advantages over other teams as, a remaining 5 against a newer iteration of a roster, I think that discrepancy will be much less prevalent in their game against Cloud9, and therefore I think Cloud9 will take it. What about you?
I agree with you, almost for the exact same reasons. I think that C9 is going to take it, and I think it's this old adage of form is temporary. That's what CLG has right now. They have great form, cohesive 5, coming in hot off their Korean boot camp, but class is permanent.
Yeah.
And C9 is a classy org. They only have to make one change that offseason. They upgrade their mid laner. Yeah, for me, C9.
Okay. All right, so we got that one behind us. Cloud9 for both of us. FlyQuest versus Golden Guardians will be the second game of the day. Where are you at on that one?
I don't know,
okay,
James. That's going to be a tricky one. 2-0
versus 0-2.
I don't know. Yeah, I think FlyQuest is going to dominate. Prince is going to get another 10-kill game. Yeah, that's easy.
Yeah, I think they should run over this one. So, again, so let me backtrack to that previous game. CLG versus Cloud9. I expect Cloud9 to win it. 100% I expect Cloud9 to win it.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if this was a close game, though.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if this, in some ways, felt... I would actually expect it to kind of feel like the EG CLG game,
but with
Cloud9 winning, just with Cloud9 actually closing the game.
C9 doesn't fuck up like 10
that's
times.
literally what I mean. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we see kind of a more scaling team fight oriented.
I mean, what we're saying is we expect CLG to just start losing and then lose.
Yes, but also because I think they will draft that way.
Yeah, sure.
So it's not to say they're just going to get beat out the game. I'm saying no, they're going to draft themselves into a position where Contracts is playing Sedge into Wukong or Sedge into Elise or something like that, and is just trying to cover for lanes and all of that.
I can see that.
And they're going to look to scale. I just don't think CLG's or C9 is going to give them that kind of a breathing room.
Okay.
But on the side of FlyQuest against Golden Guardians, I expect it to be dominant. So it's not just a win.
Yeah.
I want to see FlyQuest run over this team.
I don't even see how GG gets like a kill in that game. Let alone it could be a perfect game watch for me. Just like if we see a decent like scaling draft with enough lane prio from FlyQuest, like that's like a perfect game watch for me. Keep your eyes peeled on that game.
Yeah, could absolutely happen.
Yeah.
All right, game number 3 will be Dignitas versus 100 Thieves. So again, Dignitas, an 0-2 team. A lot of really lopsided matchups.
Yeah, but closer than you think. You know what I mean? Because like
this one for sure closer.
My gut is always like, I'll go 100 Thieves, and I think about it, and I'm like,
Do you want to call the quote unquote? I mean, it would be an upset by the numbers.
No, I mean,
one team versus no two team.
I can't. Like we can't. We can't pick for Dig over.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go 100 Thieves. In a lot of ways because of what we talked about earlier. I still don't see the winning formula for Dignitas, just stylistically or strategically. And then beyond that, where I would consider Dig's weakest part of the map being their bot lane.
Sure.
I actually, while Busio and Doublelift have not, showcased like they're the bot lane to beat in the LCS.
Yeah.
I do think that they've at least shown from a laning perspective that they can be pretty strong.
Yeah.
And so I expect 100 Thieves to kind of follow their current formula of allowing Doublelift to kind of scale up to 2-3 items and put him in a position to carry. So I'm gonna give it to 100 Thieves there.
Yeah.
Pretty handily.
Yeah, I don't think this one's gonna be close. I think that 100 Thieves on their worst day could just play a really standard game in League of Legends and win easily. I think as long as they don't get too creative, 100 Thieves just needs to draft something standard. They win this game 9 out of 10 times.
Okay. So we're in perfect agreement so far. We got to find somewhere to disagree. And I'm not sure this next game will be it, but it's Immortals versus Team Liquid. I mean, again, this is now double 0-2 team. So it's not like Team Liquid is look good.
No.
But again, to say that a team with core... For me... I don't have to go any further than Core JJ.
Right.
And I get stuck and I go, you're telling me a team with Core JJ is going to start the year 0-3 and against a team that was expected to be 9th, 10th anyway? I just don't see it happening.
You can't. You really can't choose Immortals in this game against TL. And I don't know. I see no way that they can win it. Like the Team Liquid's...
The only way I see that they win it is if Team Liquid drafts disrespectfully and gives them the Summit opening. That would be it. It would literally be the revenge Summit matchup.
Okay.
And we take advantage in the 2v2 or something top side.
So let's examine then. Let's play that out. How does it look like if Immortals were to pick up this win? I think that the Revenge Summit matchup, huge for them.
Yep.
I think Revenge does need to be a
Dude, I think it's something like we end up in that Jax Cassante
but
matchup.
Revenge is killing like over and over again.
But we've got Elise coming up top,
yeah.
and we're like hard diving the Jax or something, or vice versa. One way or the other, we're just abusing that matchup and setting Revenge up into like a 4-1 position. So maybe he has to be the Jax side of it then. I don't really know.
I think how they can win is if TL does something akin to their game 1 draft where they played like the Lucian Nami with like the Syndra Vi, like totally like weirdly early game single target pick oriented, neglecting team fight, neglecting scaling, really narrow win condition. If they opt into something like that against Immortals, like I think Immortals can win. So it's going to be Team Liquid has to bundle their draft a little bit. I think it has to be a bit of a weak draft from TL. Definitely something a little bit too early focus because Team Liquid had a problem of accelerating. They couldn't do enough in their game 1 loss. Yeah. That's how I can see it happening. But again, I think this is a really outside chance.
Can win, but won't. We're both still on Team Liquid. 5th and final game of the first day of play here in week 2 will be TSM versus Evil Geniuses. This is a game I'm super excited for because of how TSM has played. But I do think I would, in this position, still predict EG. Again, couple reasons. Number 1, I think EG's just going to be angry. I just think they're mad.
Angry EG.
And with the argument that you made earlier about a Team Liquid and how, like, hey, you can take a loss and you can amp up your practice.
Yes.
I think Evil Geniuses is exactly the kind of team that probably didn't practice 100% coming into week 1.
I don't know about that, but they'll definitely turn it up now.
I'm not saying they weren't putting in 100% effort. I guess
They left room.
They left room is what I'm saying. Like, I'm sure they all took practice seriously and felt prepared and all of that. I'm just saying, they didn't exhaust themselves. We know, and this is a team that actually, an organization that interacted and had issues of burnout. So I think they're going to be very protective early in the split of their players, and rightfully so. But therefore, I think they're going to be practicing angry and with a purpose this week. So I'm actually worried about being kind of like a blowout. Like I would have kind of inspired JoJo to be like, we are going to hard smash these clowns.
Totally.
There's like 17 dives bot lane by the time 15 minutes comes around or something.
Yeah, I mean, and the other side of the coin, the TSM side of the coin, TSM week 1 was playing with expectations. Nobody thought they were good. Nobody thought they were going to do anything. So they're playing with so much freedom to get these wins. Yeah. Now they're a 2-0 team. Now people are asking, is TSM actually good? Is TSM going to beat EG? Now there's these expectations on them. So can they find that same level of form with expectations around them changing? I don't know. We'll have to see.
I would love to see a surprise out of TSM. That would actually, I'm kind of hoping for the TSM win because again, I think it'll throw the entire league upside down if TSM goes 3-0.
I can see TSM winning this game.
They can.
I really can. And
they can.
I think because I really like the way that, TSM should, hopefully the EG and TSM aren't watching this, but TSM could cook up something special for JoJo.
Right.
With Boogie. Like Boogie loves to take creative pathing early game. He likes to get active early. I could see them finding a really creative way to attack EG. I'm excited for this game, and I'm flip flopping, but I might.
You gotta pick.
I'll go TSM. I'll lock it in. That's my gut. My gut is telling me TSM.
All right, he's calling the TSM the pick up there. I'm still gonna go with Evil Geniuses. That's the first difference we have. We've got 5 more matchups to go. Since it's the day 2 matchups, I think we'll try and speed through them a little bit quicker. FlyQuest versus Cloud9. This is a doozy. I'm going to give it to FlyQuest, man. I am all on the FlyQuest train right now because of what I saw out of Prince. And I think to a degree, there's an aura around that org right now. Dude, maybe it's because I was in the fucking music video with Avali. I don't know what it is, but there feels like some magic around that org right now. Again, with how much has changed, the acquisition of Papa Smithy. Again, I know that the roster was being built well before he was there as well. Like there's a lot of legwork done, but I just mean like this org clearly took some big stabs this year to make a mark and come away with a championship. And so I kind of feel that magic. So I'm going to go with it. I'm going to commit to it and say they take down Cloud9. Obviously this is a 51-49 matchup either way. Like it is such a close matchup.
Bro, it's like, why does FlyQuest feel unbeatable already? You know what I mean? They have this like mystique to them where it already feels like they kind of can't lose, and it feels like it'd be crazy to vote against them. So yeah, I'm gonna go FlyQuest too. But I want to see I'm interested to see how the bot lane looks because are they gonna have their starting support now?
I actually don't know,
Not
so
sure.
I can't say with
So-
confidence whether or not he's whether
Either
Alo
way,
will be back in. by
Whether
then.
it's a sub again,
Yeah.
we had questions about that week
Sure.
1, and if it's the new support, I want to see how they do. So looking at the ball lane, but I think FlyQuest.
Dig versus Evil Geniuses.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with EG here.
Yeah.
I don't really know if we need to discuss it much
No.
because a lot of what we said about Dig in their other matchup applies here. I
Yeah.
I struggle to find what their win conditions are as a team. And
Dig won't be in anybody who can't beat themselves. Basically.
we're talking about an expected top 3-4 team, in EG.
Yeah,
so
and we
this
think
should
EG's going to
this
get it
should lock
together.
up.
I think they're going to work hard this week, like you said. Yeah,
Cool.
EG.
TSM 100 Thieves. Holy shit.
TSM.
This is
2-0,
kind of
TSM
where I want to go. TSM.
TSM 4-0?
Well, so you
Because I already did
over
TSM
EG.
yesterday.
Yeah,
so now I'm thinking.
I'm gonna go with TSM.
You smell
Still,
that?
I'm gonna
It's a
go
4-0
yeah,
TSM?
No. I
No?
think it's a 3-1 because
Okay,
I'm
okay.
saying EG beats them the day
Yeah.
prior. So but I am gonna go with TSM over 100 Thieves here. I'm gonna fucking go for it.
I'm going to fucking go for it too.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Let's go.
Let's fucking go for it, man. I think that TSM look way more cohesive and they had better drafts.
And
draft and cohesion means a lot.
for
Especially early season.
Yes, totally. For me, it is about the mid game, right? Yeah. Because we've seen that 100 Thieves can build the lane leads, especially in bot lane.
Yeah.
But we've also already seen that TSM can come back from lane deficits in the bot lane.
Yes.
And so this is a situation where I'm not sure the ideal way of 100 Thieves winning a game will essentially over-index against TSM. So I'm gonna go TSM there, and you're going with it as well.
TSM.
He's
TSM
predicting
4-0.
He's predicting 4-0 TSM. By the
4-0
way,
TSM.
I'm 3-1. Okay, TL versus Golden Guardians.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and give this one to TL again. I just think they've got great matchups this week. It's Immortals and Golden Guardians, and so this might be the saving grace for them as we talk about the crappy position they're in.
For TL, you mean?
Yeah, I'm saying this might be the saving grace for them mentally.
Right.
Just mentally, that this is the week they have, and they could come out of week 2-2-2, and all of a sudden that's respectable
Bro,
again,
that's a scary
and people
week,
aren't
though.
freaking
Like,
out.
if you start 0-2 and then you have 2 games that you're really expected to win.
If you drop one of these, then all of a sudden, if they drop the first game of the week, then they could go 0-4. I could be like mental boom, right?
Yeah.
But I'm assuming they beat Immortals, and therefore I think with some confidence, they're coming into the Golden Guardians game and winning that one fairly solidly. Unless you have any real reason to disagree with that, I think we move on to our 10th and final game for the week.
Fuck you.
Okay. Yeah, as Golden Guardians would say.
Yes.
Fuck you.
Yes, moving on.
Okay, Immortals versus CLG to close things out. I mean, this is, again, in Immortals that I don't have a ton of high hopes for, so I'm going to give this one to the CLG squad after taking a loss to Cloud9 on the first day of the week.
Yeah, I think CLG are the real deal. They draft well and they play well, and yeah, I think they're going to figure it out.
Sweet.
For me, I think that CLG will actually be one of our strongest teams. I think that they'll consistently beat the teams that they should.
They're a top 5 team for me.
You think so?
Yeah, they're top 5.
Yeah, I think
I actually have 100 Thieves as my 6th. When I talk about top 6, 100 Thieves is my 6th in regular split. Still talking regular split, not talking postseason. And like CLG's top 5. I don't know if I would have them 4th or 5th, but they're top 5 for me.
I think for me, I really like CLG. I think they're going to be consistent. Contracts, like he's such a stud. He's been inconsistent in the past, but this year I don't see any of that. I think this is going to be a really strong year for him.
All right, there you have it. We're on record for our predictions for week number 2. And that brings us to the conclusion of episode 1 of Last Hit.
In the books.
An LCS podcast. Thank you, everyone, for who tuned in, stuck around this long. Again, I'll remind you, like, comment, subscribe, all of that, especially early on. It helps us a ton to see that kind of engagement and get the channel kind of signal boosted so that people see it. As well, in those comments, give us suggestions and or questions for things that you'd like to see in the future. This was very much a table setting, just kind of getting our first impressions of the teams. Not every week is just going to be a basic recap of the LCS. We want to dive into some extra topics as well. Yeah. So hit us with any ideas you have, and we'll see you next week. We'll see you for the co-streams on Thursday and Friday when the actual LCS takes place, and then back again on any of these given podcast channels for Last Hit next week. Until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and be good to each other. Peace out.